If there were a place in the world where you could store and protect the truth, it might be deep in the Rockies, in a field, on a ranch, in a silo, where an American patriot tells you what keeps him awake at night. Now, here is Medal of Honor recipient Drew Dix and words from the Silo.
Welcome, folks, to another episode of Words from the Silo. You know, the news has been throwing a lot of words around these days, and, we hear them, and I don't know about you, but some of them I'm not sure if I know what they really mean. Now, what is comprehensive immigration? Everybody says we got to have comprehensive immigration. I know what that means is we got to get something figured out.
Comprehensive immigration reform.
Comprehensive.
I think that means the reform means we need changes.
Yeah, right? I guess maybe what we have now is complex immigration.
Yeah.
And now we got to make it reform, so that's called comprehensive reform.
How about simplified immigration?
How about common sense immigration?
Yeah,
Brad?
I mean, just...
So here's the deal. First of all, we don't know how many people have come across the border. I've heard as many as 20 million. I think there's some people that are saying more, but I have heard 20, I've heard 15, I've heard 12. And then I've heard we don't know. The dumbest thing that I've heard is gotaways. If they got away, what does that mean? That we saw groups of them and we counted them and they got away, but we don't know who they are? Maybe. How about those that we never even saw?
Right.
That are not gotaways, because I guess gotaway means, like I said, you see them from the sky and they got away. Or those that we don't see, it's got to be a percentage. Somebody can figure that out. I bet there's 10 or 20% of the gotaways, that number we never even saw.
Yeah.
So, first of all, I will tell you this. The administration right now is focusing on the criminal activity and getting rid of those, but like any bureaucracy, it's hard to get the word down, and so they're going after all illegals or undocumented or whatever. Okay. You got 20 million. Let's say it's 20 million. And we're getting rid of 1,000 a day, which we aren't, I don't think.
Right.
That's 30,000 a month. A year wouldn't even be a million.
It's going to take a long time. Well, first of all, let me just ask you. I'm not making a joke. Is 20 million a lot of people? Like how many tourists do you think are in the United States at any given time? How many millions of people that aren't from here that are just on, here on vacation?
I don't know. Somebody knows that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand. I know 20 million sounds like a big number, but maybe in the context of, and maybe that's why some people that argue that it's not a big deal is that it sounds like a big number.
Well, it is a big number. There's a lot of countries that don't have 20 million people in them. Israel's one that's got 8 or 9 or so, somewhere around there, and they're a formidable force. I think they know who's in their country.
Yeah, they have 9 million people, and they're a world leader in the military and stuff. So you can rule pretty good with 20 million people.
Yeah, you can if you're all together. Yeah. We got 20 million people possibly, and the biggest problem is we should be able to figure that out if a lot of them are on the dole getting handouts. We ought to know who we're giving our money to. I think the current plan is to not give non-citizens assistance, which I think doesn't take a genius to say that's a pretty good idea.
And that should be easy to enforce, right? To not give
Yeah,
out
just don't give it to them. But I think some states, though, are taking their own lead on that. Like California was given, their own form of assistance to illegals. And I say that's a problem because they're probably using it with some federal money.
Yeah, it was. I was going to say, is that through government or ministry? I mean, I obviously religion plays into this because ministry will give to the poor, and maybe some of these undocumented folks get money from the church.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a unique problem in the United States. Immigrants, a lot of these immigrants go to successful countries. Now, I just saw something recently. Ireland, in the last 40 years, they were on the lowest and a scale of the European countries, and now they're on the top because they've had an evolution with the tech world and chips and all that. And I read somewhere, and I guess I saw it on TV, they were talking to some citizens of Ireland that had a lot of problems because they're given non-citizens priority over welfare to citizens. Yeah. It sounds stupid, but we're doing the same thing.
Does that just happen just because bureaucratic systems can't think properly and can't ebb and flow?
Well, bureaucratic systems, they just use other people's money, and it's no accountability for it. Maybe, I don't know, but it's a phenomenon that wealthy countries attract people from other countries so they can do better for their family or whatever. And I can understand that. But let's talk about what is comprehensive immigration reform. I guess that just means we got to figure out how we're going to deal with immigrants, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't take a genius to know that we ought to have a solution. And I think the first solution is not give non-citizens assistance. I don't think they should get money from a hard-working person, tax money, especially some of these people I see in the service industry and other places not making a lot of money, and they're paying some taxes, and that money goes to somebody that doesn't even belong here. Yeah. And some people would argue, yeah, they belong here if they want to come. I don't believe that. I think they should apply. And I get tired of hearing this. After all, we're a nation of immigrants. We should open the doors to everybody. Bull. No, we had people come stupid. Here from all the countries that wanted to be here, and they didn't get a handout.
Well, I mean, I'm Italian heritage, and my grandma came from Italy and grandpa's and whatever, but I never had any desire to go to Italy and to the homeland or something, know. So, I'm an American. You get proud of your cuisine and your culture and the things that make up your family, but that's where it ends,
Yeah, and I think it ought to be simple, and I think because it's going to be tough to get rid of 20 million people, if you got rid of a million a year, what is that? It's over 20 years, and there'll be more coming in. But no, I think what we got to do is let people that are here work, right? If they're not criminals and they contribute to the society. And I get tired of these people saying, well, we're not going to get our radishes picked if we don't have
that's an excuse.
Migrant workers,
That's an excuse.
Yeah, it's an excuse. So let's say that we have an expanded work program where they have a card they can work, and they get no benefits.
Well, so if they're undocumented or then they don't pay Medicare and they don't pay FICA,
and they out of their wages, get it.
But and they wouldn't get it, but they don't pay into it because they shouldn't have to pay into it, and they could pay their federal and pay their state because you're here, you're working, so you pay your part of your federal and your state out of your taxes, but you don't pay your FICA and your Social Security.
Yeah.
and your Medicare, because you're not going to get the benefit. And or why would we withhold that money from them? Let them make the money. That would be an incentive.
Yeah, let them make the money, and then it clam up those people that are complaining about it, but put the onus on the employer to monitor them, that they know who they have working for them. Like you're a businessman, and if you had a couple of those type people, it'd be up to you to collect their federal taxes and their state taxes. And they need to pay it because they're benefiting from the security, the safety, whatever services that the state or the federal government gives.
You have to pay the federal and the state out of your wages just like everybody else does.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, if they're in a situation where they're stealing their money through tax evasion or whatever, that I'm sure that happens. If a guy's an entrepreneur and he's washing cars or something, he's getting paid cash, not reporting, whatever. But that's no different than probably a lot of Americans too.
But I would put the burden on the employer. It's their choice to hire somebody that's, quote, non-citizen, right? It's their choice. If they need them, if you're in the food service business or in a farmer, a rancher, whatever, and you wanted to hire those individuals, then you hire them. And if they have a job, as long as they're working for you, then they can stay here. But and pay the taxes, state and federal. And as soon as they lose their job, for whatever reason, whether they're incompetent or you fire them, or you lose your business and you can't hire them anymore, then they have to go home.
Would you allow an undocumented or illegal to own a business?
Do what?
Would you allow them to own a business where they could get a EIN number and run a business as a, you know what I mean? Because then that becomes a little more complicated. And I think this is where a lot of this discussion gets stalemated, because they go, what if he wants to own it? What if he's going to be a 1099 guy and he doesn't, but then if they don't do their taxes and things like that, because they don't need to.
I think they could be a separate category for that pretty easy.
You would think.
We're talking about 5% or less, or 1% of all the workers could open a business.
The reason but I think a lot of them are in business because they don't get paid wages when they go work some of these jobs, and they get paid like a contractor.
Oh, so they're business.
So they're kind of a business.
Yeah.
And if I was painting houses or something, my social security number would be my employee identification number.
Well, we could make it complicated, but
that's what it is. That's the challenge, I think.
No, but I don't think they can work as a 1099 person.
Well, then there you go.
I think they should work as employee.
But most of them float around and work, and I don't know.
No, they're working for one person.
Yeah, that's an employee.
That's employee. Work one person, and as soon as they lose that job for whatever reason, then they have to report to the local immigration office or whatever, and say, I don't have a job, and you could say, okay, you gotta have 2 weeks to get one, or you gotta leave.
Yeah.
You're an illegal person.
So what's a work visa? What is that? That I've heard that term, work visa.
Well, I guess it's just like a school visa, going to education, but a green card, you come over here to work.
That's what a green card is.
I guess, yeah. I don't know all of the
comprehensive green card reform.
If you have a green card, you should be able to work, right? Okay. And maybe the green card is to work, or because you're coming here as a resident, you're not coming here for vacation.
They get their benefits though.
But I don't think that's where comprehensive immigration could become clearer.
Right.
No one gets benefits.
They shouldn't get the benefits.
No, they pay their federal taxes, because we don't get anything for federal taxes. You don't get that. You get the protection and and the local taxes is trash service and hospitals and all that, but you don't get the medical unless you have medical insurance. And maybe, I think if you go to some countries, and I read this recently, there's a top 10 countries that encourage Americans or people to come to if they have an income, but they can buy a medical insurance for like $100 a month or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the path to citizenship could be simply if you hold a job, W-2 wages over, say, the poverty line, where you made so much money per year for 3 years, say, man, that should get you your Social Security number because you've proven that you can, or whatever the time frame is. But why, I don't know why it has to be 7 years, 10 years. Why can't it be 3 years where you made over the poverty? You know, whatever the government says this is poverty, and over that threshold that makes somebody be qualified for welfare or not. And if you hold that job, that should be the quickest way to citizenship. You come over and you prove yourself.
The quickest way to citizenship is come over here to work.
Yeah, work.
Prove that you want to work, not sit on your ass and get the benefits.
That's what I'm saying.
What is the American dream? I don't know. I always heard that when I was a kid. And I thought American dream was owning your house that had a white picket fence around it. That's what I thought.
I was thinking white picket fence when you said it. First thing came to my mind.
Yeah, I mean, that's our era.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what with a dog in the yard, the mailbox attached to and you got your mail. So that's American dream. You got it. What is it that the other people want? The American dream is something they think it's whatever they can get, maybe. I don't know. But we gotta get the lawmakers together on this, and it shouldn't be complicated. I think I'd go so far as to say there's no limit to how many come over as long as they have the job.
Yeah.
And then once they lose the job, they head to wherever they came from.
Yeah, I think if you lose the job you have a certain period of time maybe to regain another one. But I just think if you've proven consistently that you could have the job for a certain amount of time, that would be a way to earn your citizenship.
Yeah, and what you brought up is a good point. Is let's say after 3 years, you can't do one in a row. 1 week or a month,
right.
You're doing good. But 3 years that you're working, and okay, you're paying state, local, and federal taxes, and then and then after a certain amount of time, you could get into Social Security because you got to that next level.
Sure. Once you get your Social Security number, you should be able to get your benefits.
That seems,
because once you're a citizen, you're a citizen. That's it.
I don't think it ought to be complicated immigration reform. I think it ought to be just immigration. It shouldn't even be comprehensive. I guess comprehensive means all-encompassing.
It shouldn't be complicated. And I guess at the end of the day, if you let people into the country that are not citizens, then you give them a path to citizenship. And if they achieve the path to citizenship, they should become a citizen.
Yeah, and there's some people that don't want to be a citizen. They just soon be a citizen of Mexico or Central American country or somewhere else, or Italy or wherever. Come here to work, make some money, and go back because it might be cheaper to live over there.
Well, that's the problem with proximity, where obviously when my grandparents came over from Italy, there was no going back. It's 1905. You're on a boat. You're not going back.
No.
And here, Mexico, it's too easy to boop, boop, boop. It's too easy to go back and forth.
Yeah, and if we make it complicated, more complicated it needs to be, it's going to give lawyers and everybody else, judges, a reason to make dumb decisions.
Well, lawyers they'll just screw it up.
Yeah.
The minute the lawyers
that's how they make their money.
Well, yeah, by screwing it up,
Well, by getting someone else to agree with them.
making it overly complicated.
Yeah, making it complicated. You know, a good friend of mine was a lawyer. He said, he always says if you get in trouble, make sure hope they get the best lawyer there is, because you don't want a dumb lawyer. It'll cost you a fortune.
Right.
Because it doesn't take much to drag it on.
If the other side has a dumb lawyer, it goes on forever.
Oh, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
But no, I think it ought to be real simple. You're a criminal, you don't come here. We got a lot of ICE employees and immigration employees. I don't think it'd be too complicated to bump this up so the Overwatch entity, whatever the span of control is, 1,000 people, 500, 10,000, I don't know. Somebody knows that you have, let's say, 1,000 people that have work visas, and they're working in different places. And as soon as they don't, it's almost like a parole officer in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, okay.
Yeah, similar.
They're paying federal taxes. That should pay for some of their enforcement of looking out for themselves or for them. But so you get this Overwatch, and they work every day. They can work there for 3 years. If they might say, I'm going to stay over here as long as Brad will hire me, but I'm going to send my money back to Mexico or somewhere else. I'm going to retire over there. It's cheaper. The money I make here will set me up pretty good. And I think there's a lot of people that don't necessarily want to be Americans. Hell, when you see these anti-ICE parades, they're waving Mexican flags and stuff. They don't want to be Americans anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Make it, let them work, but don't give them the benefits. And I think we're going to be money ahead. This will be clearer, and there should be less argument. Be less argument from the business owners that rely on labor. They'll be able to hire their labor, and also possibly come up with some kind of maybe health insurance that they can buy. It doesn't.
It's called free markets.
Free market works, but they don't need to have cosmetic surgery if they're making $12 an hour going
Unless
there.
they're really ugly.
Yeah,
Making a ton of money.
We're in trouble there, Brad.
They get cosmetic surgery.
But no, I think they get what they pay for. They come here. Let's look at this, Brad. If somebody comes here right now and they get all the benefits and they're working for $12 or $15 an hour, that's minimum wage range. Maybe some places it's 20. And so someone is hiring them for this $15 an hour, but they're getting all the benefits with major health that's worth more than $15 an hour.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's some employees that you have that the health care costs more than that.
Yeah.
And so if the government is taking care of your employees and you're paying them $12 an hour, guess who's benefiting?
No, the employer.
That's right.
No, the employer. Then that's why they don't like this discussion either. Because
don't
they're
like
losing their cheap labor.
And I think that's greed is a problem. And so
It could cause inflation because if you lose the cheap labor, then prices go up.
Well, it's everything that costs. If you don't have any effort into earning the money at the level that you're spending it, that's inflation.
Sure.
You're getting more than you work for. But no, I don't know. Maybe I'm too simple, Brad. But let's face it. Come across the border, have them check in. I got a job. Here's my letter from Brad. He's hiring me for this, and you can't say I'm hiring for 2 weeks, but let's say 6 months at this amount of per month. And you look at that, you stamp it, and you go. And you get a little card, and that card needs to be renewed.
Yeah.
Every whatever period of time that they come up with. It seems like that would be overly managed, but we got enough federal employees that are working this thing. You could even hire a few more if you start letting these people pay federal taxes and state taxes. You can hire some more people. In other words, they're paying for their own service to watch after them.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, some of the turning a blind eye to the hiring practices and the way that some employers might pay people less than minimum is just an understanding that they're going to get a subsidy. The employer's getting a subsidy of some sort. And when it comes to food, like farms and things, you gotta have the food picked and processed and everything else. You need these workers, and but there's got to be reform there in regards to so that you don't make the system collapse because of the cheap labor.
Yeah, we shouldn't necessarily be doing it for cheap labor. We should be doing it for let the market, the cost of labor be commensurate with the market, whatever that is.
It's just why we can't compete with China though on products because they have the cheap labor.
I don't know. I don't think China has a welfare system. Maybe they do.
No, they just have slaves.
That's right. Yeah. And we don't want what some people are promoting is a slavery almost.
It is slavery.
Yeah, what they're saying is, I want to be able to hire all the $12 an hour people I can. The government's going to take care of their families, give them extra money for welfare because they don't meet the subsidies, and here we go.
Right. And then maybe you give them some room and board. It's just
give them free houses, everything. No, I think this thing, we're on the right track by eliminating, in most states, the federal is on it now. They want to cut the welfare or assistance from non-citizens. I think the argument now is some states still want to do it, and so the federal government says we're not going to give you, if you're a pro-immigration, illegal immigration, and you're going to give benefits to those not working or are illegal, then we're not giving you any federal money. And I think that's a good idea because the taxpayers are paying it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then somebody will say, well, can they join the military? I think they can. I think the military has to vet them. But of course, and then they get there, their employer is the United States military. I don't have a problem with that.
That's a great path to citizenship. Same thing.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
Do your 2-3 years, whatever it is, and then you're in.
But I like your idea, Brad. Every now and then you come up with a good one. I kind of like it. Is 3 years is a good time frame. Is okay. You come in here with your green card, work card, whatever you want to call it. You report every month or whatever to your immigration officer. And after 3 years, you get another card or something that says, oh, okay, I don't have to report anymore. I don't want to be a U.S. citizen. Or I do. And then you just figure out what that path is.
And on the payroll thing, you can almost suspend the benefits. So if a guy did work for 3 years and decided to opt in after the third year to be a citizen, then his benefits would come active, his Medicare, his FICA. And if he
after the 3 years,
years, then he'd have it built up, but they could still withhold it so it doesn't mess up the way the IRS works and businesses run their payroll. But then on the flip side of that, if he decides I don't want to be a citizen or he lost a job or whatever, you forfeit any benefit. The benefits are forfeited.
U.S. citizens forfeited if if they die.
There you go.
Or two, if they decide not to do it anymore, then they don't get the benefit.
Right.
So yeah, we can be.
I just don't understand.
Compassionate.
I don't understand how you get your benefits if you don't have a Social Security number.
Oh, don't get me started. When I was running that deal in Alaska, one of the first things I did was discover what some of our vulnerabilities are, and we had a lot of seasonal workers from other countries to working in the fish plants, processing fish and stuff. And some of them could get a Social Security number, right? Here's the dumbest thing I heard. I couldn't even believe at one time it was reported to me that they determined X number of people from the Philippines, it happened because that's where a lot of the fish plant workers come from, were given wrong Social Security numbers. And I said, well, what'd you do? Well, we were going to deport them, but they said, oh, that was the wrong one. We gave you the wrong one, but his is the right one. I don't believe you get too many chances. If you come to the United States and you swear an oath or whatever, and you violate it by fraud or whatever, you're out. That's the person we don't want.
Right. Yeah.
So, no, I think comprehensive, I wish they wouldn't even use the term anymore because it implies it's too complicated.
Yeah, I hate the term.
Yeah, I don't like comprehensive reform. It's a buzzword that some politician came up with a few years ago, and they like it, I guess.
Simplified immigration process.
Common sense immigration. Boom.
That's good.
Yeah, or something. And so when is this? We're going to implement this? Oh, that's right. They're not going to ask us. But they got to watch the show. Maybe they will.
Yeah, they don't care what we say. But we can have an opinion, and maybe somebody will agree with us or not, or maybe somebody write us in and correct us where we're wrong.
Well,
I'm sure there's a lot of people smarter than us that are out there, and they know the full economic impact of everything we talked about.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, here we are. We're talking about subjects that we're not experts in. We're taxpayers. That it bothers us. It keeps us up at night. And I live in a ranch farm community, and I'd like to see some. When I lived in New Mexico on a little ranch down there, we had some vaqueros and stuff would come in. They were Mexicans and were hard workers, and they were paid like day workers' salaries, earnings. Hard workers sent a lot of their money home. I don't care what they do with their money, quite frankly. But I remember one guy I admired a lot. I asked him, why isn't he going to work for the neighbor? Oh, I just found out I can make more if I don't work.
Oh, just because
I get the benefits.
Keep his threshold down.
Yeah. I think that the amount was $10,000 or something.
Yeah.
If I make more than $10,000, then I don't get this other benefit.
Yeah. I've had that with citizens that are on the threshold of the Medicaid and, don't want extra hours because they want to stay under a certain amount. And, they can game the system. That's the problem with levels of stuff. You can always game the system a little bit. Those are one-offs typically, but the system can get gamed.
Well, we got to correct, and this is not going to happen right away. We've lost the pride in having a job or the shame in not having one, and because I remember, I think I mentioned this on another program, another episode, when I was a young guy in the 82nd Airborne Division, and I was 18. And there was a couple guys leaving. They'd done their 3 years in the military, going home, and somebody said, you can get unemployment. Somebody said, well, why would I do that? Well, because you lost your job. Well, no, I enlisted for 3 years and I don't have one. But so it was really the person that brought it up was really chastised by the majority of the young people for even coming up with this idea. That money that they could get at the time, what rings a bell was $165 a month. A private in the Army didn't make but 80, or 78 or 96, depending on your level, and $55 jump pay. So you lose your job, your 3 years is up, go home and get $165. And the guy thought, I can buy a new car and all of that stuff. And at the time, they thought it was horrible for somebody to even think that way. I think right now it's
completely reversed.
It's an angle now.
You hear very few stories like that where people were down, where the morale was that way. What you're saying, like there's a story that it's come around somewhere in the center one time where, and I can't remember who it was, but it kind of went like where someone had grown up getting welfare as a kid, ended up becoming wealthy, and paid all his welfare back. You know, said, "Hey, now that's a hand up.
That's a hand
up.
Yeah.
Hey, you helped me out. Here's all the welfare back."
I'm all for taking
that. Never
care.
happens.
You know,
that's integrity, is what that is.
That's integrity, and I'm all for taking care of people, citizens that need help.
Right.
Mentally, physically disabled, and us senior citizens are getting in that category. I'm for taking care of those. You know, I've heard stories. No, I mean they're true. That how little some people got for Social Security, older people, just a few years ago, a couple $100 a month. What does that do for anybody? And then now young people coming in, I don't care whether it's Social Security, but it's assistant, and they're not citizens getting $4,000 or $5,000 a month.
Yeah,
I mean it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense. But if somebody were to get a hold of this program and think that they want to contribute to some ideas, bring it on, because this is one. Because I don't want to hear anymore that, come on, be kind, we're a nation of immigrants. Let me tell you, if those immigrants that came across from Europe mainly, and a lot in Asia, helping build the railroads, we've all heard about that, if they were relying on assistance, if they got money, and when they landed at Ellis Island, I bet we'd have never settled the West. We'd have never crossed the Mississippi.
Right.
They did it by blood, sweat, a lot of death in the family, really hardships, but it was better than where they were.
Trailblazing the American dream.
Yeah, that's the American dream, and I'll tell you what, I'm proud of my coming from the lineage that I do. They were hardworking people from the East Coast and farmers, most of them, mostly Irish, Scots-Irish descent, and on my mother's side, German. Hardworking people, and they never got a handout. No one got a handout. They might have got soup if they were in a big city, you know, soup lines. Have you seen that and the pictures of that? I think somebody put up with that now. No. You can't even get
guys to go to the soup kitchen to get soup.
No,
they sit around on the thing going, "I'm starving to death," instead of going to get soup.
Yeah, and they can't hardly handle this. You know, you stand up in a soup line with a cup and a spoon and your cell phone. You can't handle it. You can't juggle all that.
Right.
So it's complicated. We're making it that way. But I'll tell you what, it can't be that complicated. It's got to be easy. And until we figure that we're tolerating poor behavior, then we're never going to get this solved. So just remember that tolerance is character flaw.
Just because no one knows doesn't mean it isn't true.